close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine standing at the edge of the world's most ancient desert, where the air shimmers with stories 500 million years old. Before you rises a presence so vast, so impossibly red against the endless blue sky, that it seems to pulse with its own heartbeat. This is Uluru, and tonight, as you settle into comfort, we're going to unravel 50 secrets hidden within its sandstone soul. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or simply seeking a moment of peace in your day, you've found the perfect companion. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll journey together through geological wonders that predate the dinosaurs, through cultures that have thrived for 30,000 years, and through ecosystems that bloom impossibly in one of Earth's harshest landscapes. So adjust your pillow. Let your breathing slow. And prepare to discover why this towering monolith in Australia's Red Centre isn't just a rock, it's a library of time itself, a cathedral of culture, and a testament to life's extraordinary resilience. Let's begin our journey. Take a deep breath and let yourself travel back. Not years. Not centuries. But 550 million years into Earth's distant past. We're entering an era so remote that life exists only in the oceans, and continents drift across our planet's surface in configurations you wouldn't recognize. This is when Uluru's story begins. Fact 1. Uluru's rock formed around 550 million years ago, during what geologists call the Proterozoic era. Picture this: massive mountain ranges, now vanished entirely, towering against an alien sky. As these ancient peaks eroded, rivers carried their remains, sand, gravel, sediment, into a vast inland sea that covered what would one day be called Australia's Red Centre. Layer upon layer of this debris settled, compacted under unimaginable pressure and heat, transforming gradually into the Arkose sandstone we see today. This isn't just old rock. This is the compressed memory of mountains that watched Earth's first complex life forms emerge. The sandstone remembers everything. Each grain holds the story of that ancient compression, that patient transformation from loose sediment into enduring stone. And while empires rose and fell, while species emerged and vanished, while continents collided and split apart, this rock endured. Fact 2. When you stand at Uluru's base and tilt your head back, you're looking up at a rise of 348 meters, higher than a 38-story building. That visible portion climbs to 863 meters above sea level, making Uluru taller than Paris's Eiffel Tower. But here's what makes it so breathtaking: unlike a tower built by human hands, Uluru erupts from a perfectly flat plain with almost shocking abruptness. There's no gradual build-up, no foothills to prepare your eyes. One moment, endless desert. The next, this impossible wall of rust-red stone reaching toward the heavens. Imagine the first people who encountered this site, walking for days across spinifex grasslands, perhaps following the tracks of kangaroos or the flight path of birds seeking water. And then, suddenly, this. A presence so vast it must have seemed like the earth itself had raised a monument. Fact 3. But what you see is merely the beginning of Uluru's true scale. Like an iceberg floating in Arctic waters, most of Uluru's mass exists where eyes cannot reach. Geologists estimate that up to 2.5 kilometers of rock extends downward beneath the desert floor, roots buried deep in the ancient bedrock. Think about that for a moment. The Uluru you can photograph, walk around, marvel at, that's just 1/3 of its actual size. Below the red sand and spinifex grass, hidden from every camera and every sunrise view, lies a mountain's worth of stone, anchoring this monument against the erosive forces that have, over hundreds of millions of years, stripped away everything around it. It's rather humbling, isn't it? To realize that even when we think we're seeing the whole picture, the Earth keeps most of its secrets buried. Fact 4. If you're fortunate enough to witness Uluru at dawn or dusk, you'll understand why thousands of people time their visits to these liminal hours. The rock doesn't simply stay red, it performs. At sunrise, soft pinks and purples wash across its face like watercolors on wet paper. As the sun climbs, the colors deepen, shifting through orange to crimson. Midday brings unexpected blue-gray tones. And at sunset, Uluru ignites, glowing with such intensity that photographers struggle to capture the vibrancy their eyes perceive. This chromatic symphony occurs because of iron oxide, essentially rust, embedded throughout the sandstone. As sunlight strikes the rock at different angles, as it scatters across these oxidized minerals, the wavelengths interact to create this daily masterpiece. It's chemistry, yes. But standing there in the cooling desert air, watching this ancient stone blaze against the darkening sky, it feels like witnessing something sacred. A nightly ritual 500 million years in the making. Fact 5. The specific composition of Uluru's sandstone tells us even more about its formation. This is what geologists call arkose, a coarse-grained sandstone rich in feldspar, a mineral that forms in granite and typically breaks down quickly during erosion. But Uluru's feldspar remained intact, preserved in the rock matrix. This tells us the sediments were deposited rapidly, swept into that ancient sea so quickly that the feldspar grains didn't have time to weather away. That rapid deposition, combined with the sediment's granitic source, gives Uluru its characteristic hardness and gritty texture, qualities that have allowed it to survive while softer rocks around it crumbled to dust. Every grain of sand in this monolith came from mountains we'll never know, mountains whose very names vanished into deep time along with their peaks. Fact 6. Here's something remarkable about Uluru's structure. It lacks the joints and bedding planes you'd typically find in sedimentary rocks. Most sandstone formations fracture along natural weak points, creating the scree piles and talus slopes you see at the base of many cliffs. But Uluru's homogeneous structure means it erodes cleanly. Material that breaks away doesn't accumulate, it washes cleanly off during those rare but intense desert rains. This is why Uluru's flanks remain sheer and dramatic, why its base stays clear rather than buried under its own debris. The rock's uniformity, born from that rapid ancient deposition, preserved it as a nearly pristine Inselberg, an island mountain, rising from the desert plain. Fact 7. The Petermann orogeny, a mountain-building event that occurred between 550 and 530 million years ago, provided the raw material for Uluru. This tectonic episode uplifted vast mountain ranges, and as these ranges eroded, they released torrents of sand and gravel into sedimentary basins. Those deposits, rich in feldspar from the erogenous granitic core, later lithified under burial pressure and heat. But the Petermann orogeny didn't just supply the material, it also folded and tilted the resulting rock layers, setting the stage for the dramatic exposure we see today. Close your eyes and picture it, mountains rising from tectonic forces, rivers of sediment flowing into shallow seas, everything settling, compressing, being buried deeper, heated, transformed. Geology operates on timescales our minds struggle to comprehend, yet every process follows physical laws as precise as clockwork. Fact 8. Those tectonic forces left their signature in Uluru's structure. The sedimentary layers that formed horizontally were tilted to a steep 60-degree angle, creating the distinctive grain visible on the rock surface. Over millions of years, as softer overlying rocks eroded away, these tilted beds became exposed. During rain, water follows these ancient bedding planes, creating waterfalls that cascade along predictable paths determined by geology set in motion 500 million years ago. The rock remembers its violent tilting, its transformation from horizontal seafloor sediment to dramatically angled monument, and that memory shapes the flow of every raindrop. Fact 9. Uluru's surface isn't smooth. Up close, you'll discover deep scars, sheltering caves, and dramatic notches carved by what geologists call sheeting erosion. In the desert's extreme temperature swings, the rock's surface expands and contracts, causing parallel sheets to exfoliate like layers of an onion. Variations in mineral hardness within the arkose amplify this process, with softer zones eroding faster to create shelters and fissures. One such cave, Galtawada, holds special significance in Aṉangu culture as a ceremonial site. These features blend natural processes with human history, showing how geology and culture intertwine across millennia. Fact 10. Even now, even today, Uluru continues changing. The iron minerals in the sandstone oxidize slowly but continuously, forming more hematite, the mineral responsible for that signature red color. It's the same process that creates rust on iron exposed to air and moisture. Every rare rain, every breath of oxygen-carrying desert wind, contributes to this ongoing transformation. The change occurs imperceptibly, measurable only across centuries, but it's happening. Uluru remains geologically active even in the desert's harsh stillness, quietly refining its color, slowly wearing away, patiently becoming whatever it will be another million years from now. Let that sink in for a moment. 500 million years of patient geological processes, all visible in this single extraordinary formation. And we're only just beginning to understand what makes Uluru so remarkable. Now shift your perspective. Imagine you're not seeing Uluru through the eyes of a geologist or tourist, but through the eyes of the Aṉangu people, whose connection to this place stretches back not hundreds, but tens of thousands of years. To them, Uluru isn't just stone shaped by ancient seas and tectonic forces. It's a library, a law book, a sacred text written in sandstone and shadow, teaching how to live, how to survive, how to maintain balance between people and land. Fact 11, for the Aṉangu Pichinchachara and Yankanajatjara peoples, Uluru embodies what they call Tjukurpa, their living law system of creation narratives, moral codes, and relationships with the land. These aren't myths in the Western sense of ancient stories disconnected from present reality. Tjukurpa is active, current, continuously practiced. It originates from ancestral beings who, during the creation time, shaped the world, established laws, and left their marks upon the landscape. Every cave, every waterhole, every curve and shadow of Uluru narrates specific events from these creation journeys. The rock is simultaneously history book, legal code, and spiritual guide, teachings passed down through ceremonies, songs, and daily practices that link the ancient past to this present moment. Imagine inheriting a philosophy so complete, so thoroughly integrated with the landscape itself, that every feature of your home country tells you how to live well within it. Fact 12, this deep spiritual significance means certain sites at Uluru are not for public eyes. Specific locations on the western face house gender-specific sacred knowledge, places where photography is forbidden to protect Tjukurpa teachings from unauthorized sharing. These restrictions preserve rituals for initiated community members only, maintaining the integrity of knowledge systems refined over millennia. And in 2019, after decades of anger requesting that visitors respect their wishes, the climbing ban was finally implemented. The climb had always caused spiritual distress to traditional owners. Imagine watching thousands of strangers scaling what is, to you, a sacred ancestor. Over 35 deaths had occurred on that climb. The 2019 ban shifted tourism toward respectful base walks, honoring Aṉangu custodianship and reducing cultural harm while actually improving the visitor experience for those willing to listen rather than conquer. Fact 13, in 1987, Uluru Katak Juda National Park received UNESCO World Heritage status for its outstanding geological value. But that designation felt incomplete, because it recognized the rock without fully acknowledging the culture inextricably woven through it. So in 1994, UNESCO added cultural criteria, recognizing this as the world's most intact indigenous cultural landscape. This dual designation is rare globally. And it became possible because of what happened in 1985, the historic handback when the Australian government returned freehold title to Aṉangu traditional owners after more than a century of colonial dispossession. The Aṉangu immediately leased it back to Parks Australia for 99 years, creating a joint management partnership that fuses indigenous knowledge with Western conservation science. Traditional fire management techniques complement modern ecology. Tracking expertise guides feral predator control. Two knowledge systems, working together. Fact 14, archaeological evidence confirms what Aṉangu oral history maintains. Their ancestors have occupied this region for at least 30,000 years. Think about that temporal depth. While Uluru's rock is 550 million years old, the human connection spans 300 centuries of continuous cultural association, one of the longest anywhere on Earth. Rock shelters at the base contain multi-layered ochre paintings depicting Tjukurpa figures, animals, hunting scenes, and law stories. These weren't created once and forgotten, they were maintained, repainted, added to across generations. Each layer represents teaching sessions where elders passed on survival skills, kinship rules, spiritual knowledge to young people in this harsh environment. The paintings are textbooks, constantly updated, preserving what needed to be known. Fact 15, Tjukurpa governs everything: social structure, ceremonies, resource use, marriage laws, conflict resolution. Uluru's caves serve as stages for reenacting creation stories involving ancestral beings like Kania, the python woman who battled intruders at specific sites you can still visit today. These aren't performances for tourists, they're private initiations and teachings that maintain cosmic and social balance. Through these ceremonies, conducted in caves whose locations were chosen by ancestral beings themselves, knowledge passes orally from generation to generation. This ensures cultural continuity even as the modern world presses in from every direction, threatening to drown out ancient voices. Fact 16. That 1985 handback marked Australia's first native title transfer, a pivotal moment in the nation's reckoning with colonial history. But it wasn't merely symbolic. The resulting partnership between Aṉangu traditional owners and Parks Australia has yielded tangible conservation successes. Feral cat populations, devastating to native marsupials, have been significantly reduced using combined traditional tracking and modern technology. Native species like the bilby have begun recovering in areas where they'd nearly vanished. This model of blending knowledge systems, respecting both indigenous ecological understanding refined over millennia and Western scientific methods, offers lessons for conservation efforts globally. It shows that reconciliation isn't just morally right, it produces better outcomes. Fact 17. Caring for country is fundamental to Tjukurpa, a sacred obligation to maintain the land's health through active management. Aṉangu conduct carefully planned patch burns during cool seasons, mimicking ancestral fire patterns that have shaped this landscape for tens of thousands of years. These burns reduce fuel loads, preventing catastrophic wildfires while promoting diverse habitats. Different plant species respond to fire in different ways, and traditional burning creates a mosaic of vegetation at various stages of succession. This diversity supports more wildlife, keeps songlines viable, and embodies a holistic environmental ethic where land health and cultural vitality are inseparable. The land isn't just scenery to be preserved under glass, it's a living entity requiring active participation to flourish. Fact 18. In the remote Mutitjalu community near Uluru Space, tourism generates approximately 70% of income through Aṉangu enterprises. Traditional owners hold ownership stakes in Ayers Rock Resort, operate art cooperatives selling paintings and crafts, and run guiding services where visitors learn directly from culture bearers. This economic self-determination funds housing, education, healthcare, and cultural programs. It transforms what could have been extractive tourism, where outside corporations profit from indigenous land, into a model where the community controls how their culture is shared and financially benefits from that sharing. Visitors leave with authentic experiences. Aṉangu maintain economic and cultural autonomy. Everyone gains. Fact 19. The Uluru Katak Juda Cultural Center exemplifies this balanced approach. Designed and operated by Aṉangu, it showcases intricate dot paintings that function as Tjukurpa maps, each dot, each line, each color carrying layers of meaning about creation stories, land features, and law. Multimedia kiosks preserve elders' voices narrating oral histories, creating a permanent record even as the living carriers of these traditions age. Art sales directly benefit over 100 local artists. The center doesn't just display culture as artifact, it presents living traditions, inviting visitors into dialogue with knowledge keepers themselves. Fact 20. Those multi-layered rock art sites teach practical and spiritual lessons simultaneously. Paintings illustrate hunting techniques refined over millennia, showing where to find water during drought, explaining kinship obligations that prevent social conflict. The art evolves over time as new layers are added, documenting how knowledge systems adapt while maintaining core values. And that 2019 climb closure didn't diminish tourism, it enhanced it. Base circuit hikes increased by 20% as visitors spent more time actually learning about Uluru rather than simply conquering it. Fatalities ended. Respectful engagement increased. The ban aligned mass tourism with Aṉangu values, proving that restriction and enrichment can coexist. 30,000 years of continuous culture, still practiced, still taught, still shaping how this land is managed and understood. Uluru stands not just as geological marvel, but as testament to human wisdom's enduring power. Let's turn our attention now to life itself, to the extraordinary adaptations that allow plants, animals, and entire ecosystems to not merely survive, but thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Because despite Uluru's harsh desert setting, life here doesn't just persist. It flourishes in intricate, interconnected ways that reveal nature's boundless creativity. Fact 21. Uluru receives an average of just 300 millimeters of rain annually, barely more than a foot of precipitation spread across an entire year. For comparison, London receives over 600 millimeters. But here's the fascinating part: when rain does arrive, it transforms the landscape utterly. Summer monsoons bring intense deluges that trigger spectacular waterfalls plunging hundreds of meters from Uluru's joints and fractures. These sudden floods replenish underground aquifers, spark carpets of wildflowers that weren't visible days before, and reveal hidden caves as water carves temporary channels. For a few brief weeks, the desert pulses with abundant life before rapid evaporation resumes and dormancy returns. It's an ecosystem of extremes: boom and bust, explosion and patience. Fact 22. Within this arid environment, Uluru's vicinity supports over 400 plant species, an astonishing diversity given the harsh conditions. Resilient shrubs, ephemeral herbs that complete their entire life cycle in weeks, grasses that can survive years of drought. Animal life is equally varied: red kangaroos, dingoes, thorny devils with their remarkable armor, and 178 bird species, all precisely adapted to aridity through nocturnal habits, physiological water conservation, or behavioral flexibility. Uluru creates microclimates through its shadow and runoff channels, amplifying this oasis effect. Water that runs off the rock during rains concentrates in certain areas, sustaining surprisingly vibrant ecological webs despite the overall low rainfall. Fact 23. You'll often hear Uluru called the world's largest monolith, but that's not technically accurate. Western Australia's Mount Augustus actually claims greater volume. Yet Uluru's singular dome shape, its spectacular color transformations, and especially its profound cultural significance have made it globally iconic in ways raw size cannot explain. This reveals something interesting about human perception. We're drawn not just to physical superlatives, but to meaning, to beauty, to story. Uluru captivates because it offers all three in abundance. Mount Augustus may be larger, but Uluru speaks to something deeper than measurement. Fact 24. Uluru doesn't stand alone. 35 kilometers to the west rise Tjukurpa, many heads in the local language, a formation of 50 domes reaching 546 meters high. Unlike Uluru's sandstone, Tjukurpa consists of conglomerate rock, formed from pebbles and boulders cemented together. The two formations originated simultaneously in that ancient inland sea, but erosion sculpted them differently because of their distinct compositions. Together, they anchor the 1,326 square kilometer national park, and together they feature in Tjukurpa narratives. The smooth monolith and the rugged multiplicity pair across the desert plain like siblings with contrasting personalities but shared heritage. Fact 25. Spinifex grass dominates 70% of the park, forming prickly hummocks that define the landscape's texture. These tussocks serve multiple ecological functions. Their structure funnels scarce dew and rainfall toward roots, maximizing water capture. The resin-rich vegetation ignites readily, providing fuel for Aṉangu patch burns that maintain ecosystem health. And beneath those scratchy mounds, small mammals like bilbies and birds like quails find shelter from predators and brutal midday sun. Spinifex might seem hostile to human skin, but it's a keystone species here, stabilizing sand dunes and indicating the health of fire-managed landscapes. Fact 26. Desert oaks, Allocasuarina decasniana, stand as stark sentinels dotting the plain around Uluru, their silhouettes resembling pines despite being unrelated. These remarkable trees shed papery bark annually, reducing water loss through transpiration. But their real secret lies underground. Taproots plunge 15 meters down to reach groundwater lenses beneath the desert floor. Their needle-like leaves fix nitrogen, enriching the nutrient-poor soils that characterize this ancient, weathered landscape. Desert oaks embody patience, sending roots deep to access resources invisible on the surface, thriving where hasty shallow-rooted species cannot. Fact 27. Among the most extraordinary adaptations belong to desert frogs. Species like Neobatrachus spend most of their lives underground, encased in self-secreted mucus cocoons within meter-deep burrows. There they wait, metabolism slowed to near zero, sometimes for years, until the right rains come. When heavy storms finally arrive, these frogs emerge en masse, filling temporary pools with deafening choruses as they rush to breed before water evaporates. Tadpoles develop rapidly, completing metamorphosis in record time. Then the new generation burrows down, resuming the wait. It's a life of profound dormancy punctuated by frantic activity, boom-bust ecology embodied in a single species life cycle. Fact 28, Uluru itself creates ecological advantages through its mere presence. Studies have shown that the monolith's elongated morning shadow generates cooler, moister zones along its base, microclimates where lizards like the Great Desert skink cluster to forage. While the open desert bakes under merciless sun, these shadow zones provide refuge hours longer than rocks or bushes could offer. Biodiversity gradients radiate outward from Uluru, with species composition changing based on distance from the rock and the shade/moisture patterns it creates. The stone isn't just scenery, it's an ecological engineer, shaping habitat conditions across the surrounding landscape. Fact 29, at Uluru's southern base lies Mutijulu Waterhole, a permanent pool that filters storm runoff through fractured arcos. In a land where water sources vanish for months at a time, this perennial pool is precious beyond measure. It's sacred in Tjukurpa as Langkata's site, part of creation narratives still taught today. But it's also critically important for wildlife, quenching dingoes, birds, and countless other species year-round when every other water source has dried to cracked mud. The existence of permanent water in the desert center draws life from miles around, creating a concentrated biodiversity hotspot. Fact 30, those Aṉangu patch burns we discussed earlier demonstrate sophisticated ecological knowledge translated into practical land management. Small, cool fires create heterogeneous mosaics of burned and unburned patches across the landscape. Different areas are at different stages of succession, recently burned zones with ash-fertilized soil, mid-stage areas with vigorous new growth, mature unburned sections providing stable habitat. This diversity prevents landscape-scale wildfires while supporting more species than uniform vegetation could. Fire cues seed germination in many native plants. Acacias and spinifex have evolved to respond to burning. The Tjukurpa fire calendar aligns seasonal burning with plant life cycles, maintaining the ecosystem in states that have sustained life here for tens of thousands of years. Life in the desert isn't about bare survival. It's about intricate adaptations, patient strategies, and complex interdependencies that transform scarcity into sufficiency. Everything here has found its particular solution to the problem of aridity, and together, these solutions weave an ecosystem of unexpected abundance. We're past the halfway point now on our journey through Uluru's secrets. You've learned about ancient geology, enduring culture, and resilient ecosystems. Now let's explore some of the more surprising, unexpected aspects of this place, the details that might not fit neatly into categories but reveal just how layered and extraordinary Uluru truly is. Fact 31, step outside at night near Uluru, and you'll be greeted by some of the darkest, clearest skies on Earth. The remoteness that makes Uluru feel isolated from modern civilization also means almost no light pollution. The Southern Cross blazes overhead with startling clarity. The Milky Way arcs across the heavens like a river of light, visible in detail that urban dwellers never experience. Aṉangu star lore interprets these patterns, finding navigational guides and seasonal calendars written in constellations. And occasionally, after rare heavy rains, another phenomenon appears, bioluminescent fungi glowing softly in damp caves. Mycelial networks decomposing organic matter emit gentle greenish light, a fleeting desert magic visible only when conditions align perfectly. Darkness here reveals wonders rather than emptiness. Fact 32, listen carefully in the quiet hours and you might hear the haunting calls of southern bubuk owls nesting in Uluru's fissures. These nocturnal hunters have lived here far longer than human memory extends, and in Tjukurpa, their calls carry meaning, ancestral warnings, omens requiring interpretation. Aṉangu taboos protect these owls, recognizing them as more than mere predators. They're participants in the same web of relationships that connects people to land, past to present, practical ecology to spiritual understanding. The owls hunt. The owls call. And in their voices, attentive listeners hear the ancestors speaking still. Fact 33. Geologically, Uluru is classified as an Inselberg, from German words meaning island mountain. It protrudes isolated from the surrounding pedoplain, a flat eroded surface that has been worn down over 300 million years while resistant Arkos remain standing. Globally, Inselbergs are relatively rare landforms, showcasing selective weathering where one rock type endures while everything around it gradually disappears. Uluru is among the world's most spectacular examples of this process, demonstrating how small differences in rock composition can produce dramatic differences in landscape features across deep time. Fact 34. If you walk Uluru's base circuit, a 10.6-kilometer trail that takes 3 to 4 hours, you'll notice distinct asymmetry in the rock shape. The western face rises nearly vertical, its surface scoured smooth by prevailing westerly winds. But the eastern slopes are gentler, softened by lighter winds and sheltering from the harshest erosion. This asymmetry guides where waterfalls flow during rains, where caves have formed, where vegetation clusters. Erosion isn't uniform, it responds to wind direction, water flow patterns, and subtle variations in rock hardness, sculpting Uluru into its present form over millions of patient years. Fact 35. The sediments that would become Uluru derive from truly spectacular mountains, peaks 5 kilometers high, glaciated and snow-capped during the Peterman orogeny when this region experienced a wetter, cooler climate. Try to picture that, massive alpine ranges where today you find only flat desert. Those mountains are entirely gone now, eroded completely away. But their compressed remnants endure as Uluru, a monument to vanished highlands whose very existence we would never know without this sandstone record. The rock remembers ice and snow and torrential rivers in a landscape now defined by heat and aridity. Fact 36. More technically, Uluru belongs to the Mutitjalu Arkos member within the broader Amadeus Basin, a 2.5-kilometer thick sequence of Proterozoic sediments that filled a subsiding rift as the continent stretched and thinned. Later tectonic forces inverted the basin, uplifting what had been buried and exposing it to erosion. Uluru represents just one small piece of this vast geological story, but it's the piece that resisted destruction, the portion that stood when everything else yielded. Understanding its place in the Amadeus Basin's history reveals how local landscapes connect to continental-scale tectonic processes. Fact 37. Song lines, those narrative paths that connect sacred sites across vast distances, link Uluru to waterholes and ceremonial grounds hundreds of kilometers away. Aṉangu people from distant regions would journey along these song lines for ceremonies, particularly those involving Mo, kangaroo, and other totems. The songs serve as mnemonic devices, encoding navigational information, water source locations, and cultural knowledge into memorable verses sung while traveling. These invisible pathways create a vast and tangible cultural network across Central Australia, with Uluru as one major node in a web of meanings spanning the continent. Fact 38. When you take a tour with SEIT Outback Australia, one of the indigenous-owned tourism operators working at Uluru, 80% of guides are Aṉangu themselves. This isn't tokenism, it's authentic cultural transmission. Elders and younger Aṉangu share Dreamtime narratives directly, explaining their own ancestors' stories rather than having outside interpreters relay second-hand information. The vehicles navigate off-road to places mass tourism doesn't reach. You're learning from the source, and your payment directly supports Aṉangu economic independence and cultural continuity. It merges economy with authenticity in ways that benefit everyone. Fact 39. Those rock art sites at Uluru's base contain superimposed layers spanning 10,000 or more years. Hand stencils overlap emu tracks. Geometric patterns cover older representational figures. Each layer chronicles both environmental changes and cultural evolution, showing how Tjukurpa teachings adapted while maintaining core truths. Newer paintings sometimes reaffirm or reinterpret older ones, creating visual palimpsests, documents overwritten repeatedly yet preserving glimpses of earlier versions beneath. The walls serve as intergenerational textbooks, continuously updated across millennia. Fact 40. When rare tropical storms sweep down from the north, Uluru's waterfalls reach spectacular heights, cascades plunging 100 meters or more from the tilted bedding plains. The normally dry flanks become rivers. And within days, the desert floor explodes with color as ephemeral wildflowers, Sturt's desert peas with their brilliant red and black blooms, grevilleas, various daisies, complete their entire life cycles in weeks. Seeds that have waited years for sufficient moisture suddenly germinate en masse. The desert resurrects, vibrant and urgent, before heat and aridity resume their patient dominance. These moments remind us that scarcity and abundance exist on different timescales here, and both are equally true. Hidden wonders, unexpected connections, details that surprise even after extensive study. Uluru rewards attention, revealing new layers the deeper you look. Finally, let's bring our journey into the present day. How do people engage with Uluru now? How does this ancient, sacred, ecologically vital place exist within our modern world of tourism, economics, and cultural exchange? The final 10 facts explore Uluru's contemporary significance, the practical realities of visiting, the economic impacts, and the ongoing evolution of how humanity relates to this extraordinary place. Fact 41. In 2024, Uluru Kata Kjuta National Park welcomed approximately 245,000 visitors. That's down from the pre-2019 peak of over 406,000, but the demographic composition has shifted. About 70% of current visitors are domestic Australians, whereas before 2019, international tourists formed a larger proportion. The climbing ban, combined with COVID-19's disruption of global travel, reshaped who comes and why. Those who arrive now tend to seek cultural understanding rather than conquest, engagement rather than selfies from the summit. It's a smaller number, but arguably a more meaningful kind of tourism. Fact 42. Visitor numbers peak during winter, Australia's June through August, when temperatures range from pleasant to comfortable rather than the brutal heat of summer. During July school holidays, arrivals can surge to 1,000 people daily, filling the base walks and cultural center, booking out helicopter flights and camel safaris. But visit in the shoulder seasons or summer, and you'll find dramatically fewer people, offering quieter opportunities for contemplation. The desert sun in December can be punishing, but if you can handle the heat, you'll have Uluru nearly to yourself at times. Fact 43. Those 245,000 visitors injected approximately 8.76 million Australian dollars into the regional economy in 2024, an increase of 9.4% from the previous year. Tourism sustains 28% of jobs in the Lassiter Shire, from hospitality workers to art gallery staff to tour guides. It's a substantial economic impact for a remote region. However, high airfare costs continue to cap fuller recovery to pre-pandemic levels, making Uluru relatively expensive to reach compared to coastal Australian destinations. The challenge is making visitation accessible while maintaining sustainable numbers that protect both the environment and cultural sites. Fact 44. What do people actually do at Uluru? The 10.6-kilometer base walk remains the most popular activity, a 3 to 4 hour loop best undertaken at dawn or dusk when temperatures moderate and the light transforms the rock into that spectacular color show we discussed earlier. Angle-led interpretive walks reveal Tjukurpa stories connected to specific locations. Visitors learn why certain caves matter, what particular rock features represent, how ancestral beings shaped the land. Since the climbing ban, these respectful, educational experiences have become tourism's ethical core, aligning visitor behavior with cultural values rather than treating Uluru as merely a physical challenge to overcome. Fact 45. About 80% of visitors explore the Uluru Kata Kjuta Cultural Center, which has become far more than a museum. Hands-on workshops teach dot painting techniques, explaining the symbolism and stories embedded in the art. Bush tucker demonstrations show how Aṉangu harvested and prepared native foods in this harsh environment. Films preserve elders' voices and faces for future generations while sharing culture with visitors. The center bridges gaps, inviting outsiders into dialogue with living traditions rather than presenting indigenous culture as something from the distant past. It's education, preservation, and cultural exchange happening simultaneously. Fact 46. Most visitors fly into Aṉangu Airport, also known as Ayers Rock Airport, located just 8 kilometers from the resort area. Direct flights arrive from major Australian cities, making the journey surprisingly straightforward despite Uluru's remote location. The average stay is 3.31 nights, long enough to experience both Uluru and Tjukurpa's Valley of the Winds walk, perhaps a sunrise and sunset viewing, the cultural center, and maybe a guided tour or two. It's a comprehensive park experience that balances multiple sites and activities rather than focusing solely on the monolith itself. Fact 47. Beyond walking, visitors can experience the landscape through eco-friendly camel safaris at sunset, slow, gentle rides offering elevated perspectives across the spinifex plains as Uluru glows in the fading light. Scenic helicopter flights, with no landing policies to minimize disturbance, provide aerial views revealing patterns invisible from ground level. These activities operate under strict visitor caps designed to preserve the area's tranquility and prevent overcrowding. The goal is low-impact experiences that enrich rather than exploit, that leave the place fundamentally unchanged despite thousands of annual visitors. Fact 48. After dark, Uluru reveals different magic. Night tours spotlight constellations while guides share Aṉangu astronomical knowledge, how stars guided navigation, marked seasonal changes, and feature in creation stories. And running through 2029, artist Bruce Monroe's Field of Light installation transforms the desert with 50,000 fiber optic stems pulsing in colors inspired by ancestral patterns and the desert's natural palette. Walking among these lights as Uluru's silhouette rises against the starry sky creates an almost dreamlike experience, blending contemporary art with ancient landscape in ways that honor both. Fact 49. Looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, tourism projections show continued growth, particularly from Asian and European markets seeking authentic cultural experiences and eco-luxury accommodations. SEIT cultural safaris are expanding offerings. Solar-powered glamping pods provide low-impact overnight stays under those pristine dark skies. There's rising demand for meaningful engagement. Visitors want to understand, to learn, to connect, not just to photograph and leave. This shift toward quality over quantity, toward respect over consumption, suggests tourism can evolve in ways that benefit both visitors and traditional owners. Fact 50. Yet challenges remain. Despite recent gains, Northern Territory tourism still operates about $200 million annually below pre-COVID levels, largely because flight costs deter international visitors who once formed the majority. Airfares to remote Central Australia remain expensive, creating accessibility barriers. The question becomes, how do you balance making Uluru available to those who would benefit from experiencing it against protecting it from overcrowding, against preserving its fragile ecosystems and sacred sites, against ensuring Aṉangu maintain control over their own land and culture? It's an ongoing negotiation with no perfect answer, just the continuous work of seeking balance between preservation and sharing, between economic needs and cultural protection. And there we have it. 50 facts about Uluru, spanning 500 million years of geology, 30,000 years of human culture, delicate desert ecosystems, and the complex modern relationship between this sacred place and the wider world. But perhaps the most important thing to understand about Uluru isn't captured in any single fact. It's the way all these elements, ancient rock, enduring culture, resilient life, contemporary challenges, interweave into something greater than their sum. Uluru teaches us that time operates on multiple scales simultaneously. That rock remembers. That culture endures. That life finds ways. That respect and understanding matter more than conquest. Whether you'll ever stand in its shadow yourself, or whether tonight's journey through words and imagination is as close as you'll come, Uluru now lives a little more vividly in your mind. You understand it as more than just a landmark. It's a geological archive, a cultural library, an ecological laboratory, and a spiritual presence all at once. As you drift towards sleep, or simply carry these stories with you into your day, remember, every landscape has layers. Every place has depth if we take time to truly look, truly listen, truly learn. Uluru simply makes those layers more visible, those depths more accessible, those lessons more profound. Thank you for traveling with me across the Red Center, through deep time and living culture, into one of Earth's most extraordinary places. Sleep well, dream deeply, and may you always find wonder in the world around you.